Welcome to Shaping E-commerce with Iron Plane. This is where we talk about e-commerce development, solutions, digital marketing, and all things e-commerce. Be sure to check out the description below each video to find additional resource links and show notes. We upload new videos each day. Please like and subscribe to our channel.
So welcome back to Shaping E-commerce with Iron Plane. I'm Tim Bucciarelli. I'm the Director of Engagement for Iron Plane. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Stefan Schinkel from dotCMS. And we're going to continue our conversation in the world of headless and composable, and more specifically on the front end and CMS world. So hopefully merchants listening out there, this will be interesting to you, something more for you to learn about. And Stefan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Tim. Good morning.
So before we start, we always like to get people a little bit introduced to you and your background, and then a little bit more about dotCMS itself.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been with dotCMS for 5.5 years now. The Chief Revenue Officer, so really responsible for revenue. Prior to dotCMS, I worked at Hippo, a Dutch content management system that was acquired in 2016 by Bloomreach. That was also the reason why I moved to the US in 2013. But then Hippo was acquired in 2016, and I joined dotCMS in 2017, and I still have an awesome time here at dotCMS.
Okay, so dotCMS, like clearly CMS is in the name of the company, so
Yeah.
Content Management System. But I think there's a little bit more to the story. So help us understand what exactly dotCMS is and what its role is in the world of e-commerce merchants.
No, that's a great question, right? So let me take it one step back. So we've been around since 2003. And initially, dotCMS started as a marketing agency, building websites for customers. And you see this a lot with content management vendors. Even Hippo also started like that. And at some point, we even had an email delivery platform. But early on, we decided to really focus on content management. And this is really what we do and want to do really well. We're not drinking that whole DXP Kool-Aid. We're a content management system, period. Right? And as you know,
and DXP, for those who don't know,
digital experience platform.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it's coined by Gartner, and it's just a classification of a platform, or a combination of technologies quite often. But again, we really want to focus on content management. And as you know, our industry has a lot of qualifications. And if you want to put dotCMS in one or more buckets, the first bucket that comes to mind is really a hybrid headless content management system, right? Meaning you can run dotCMS as a pure headless system and control the presentation layer with any application or JavaScript framework as you see fit. Could also be Vue Storefront or some of those front-end as a service vendors dedicated to the head. But at the same time, and again, this is from its inception, we also have our own delivery tier, right? So you can build pages in dotCMS, and that's really where we differentiate a little bit from the pure headless players like Contentful and Content Stack. So that's one bucket, right? So, but we're also an API-first platform. So anything we do is around an API, and you can consume those, content, but also relationships, personalization settings, and what have you over APIs. And we've standardized on, again, for the technical people, on REST and GraphQL, and provide the tools for developers to build those integrations with storefronts, right? Or front-end applications, or even back-end applications with the rest of the digital marketing stack, whether it's a commerce engine or, a digital asset management system or marketing automation, et cetera. A content management system is the happiest system out there. They never walk alone, right? And so that's what I love about content management. A lot about interoperability, working with other systems in the stack to basically build the platform that the customer wants. Does that
So,
make sense?
yeah, it does. Of course, 50 million questions floating around in my head after that. I think that we'll stay the course and just talk a little bit about, given that background, who needs it? Who is it best suited to? And when I ask that
Sure.
question, I ask it because I know in my experience a lot of these technologies are very appealing to a lot of different companies, but then they
Yeah.
get into the requirements for internal resources to manage the technology, really make the most of it, the financial resources to maintain, support, optimize over time. And so at a certain level, there's a kind of minimum level of business that
Sure.
can make use of these platforms. And I'm just curious to know where that level is for .cms.
No, absolutely. So a couple of things. So if you look at our key or top ICPs, ideal customer profiles, right? I think first and foremost, you see financial services. By far, they represent the biggest chunk in our customer base, and so they use us for mobile apps, public-facing websites, but also for customer portals and even intranets, right? So I think 80% of our customers is using dotCMS also for internal facing or gated, applications like a customer portal. For instance, Standard & Poor's, they have like 10 million content objects in .cms, and they use it, for their customers, institutional investors, to expose relevant content. Just a simple use case there. Um, but as a content management system, you always serve, two stakeholders, right? In the end of the day, you have a non-technical business user, right? Whether it's a content editor or a marketer or a merchandiser, in a retail context, is using the platform. So we're building, obviously, the platform for those people. Now, on the other hand, you have your development team. There's always a development effort in any content or enterprise grade content management system, right? So you also need to provide the tools to make developer teams happy so they can implement and maintain the applications that they build on top of that CMS going forward, right? So those are definitely the key personas that we built for. And then secondly, we also work a lot for retail, right? So it's definitely the number two ICP that we have. And again, in retail, you see the typical, of course, your corporate website, but a lot of landing pages, product detail pages, regardless if the product information is sitting in .cms. And we have some customers that use .cms as a PIM, but also obviously storing that product information in commerce engines, right? So that's the second ICP. And then the third one, I would say high-tech software companies, telcos, and utilities. Historically, that ICP has a lot of in-house Java capabilities. They also typically host the software themselves, which is one of the two products that we offer. So you can self-host .cms. They want to have a bigger, level of control on the underlying infrastructure. So that's why they want to host it themselves. So yeah.
So it's again enterprise, financial services, retail, and utility, but it could be other similar. But really, you are an enterprise level platform. So
Correct.
we're
Yeah.
talking now enterprise. Just not that this is the sole criteria, but enterprise in my book starts at around 200 million annual and goes up to 5 billion, 100 billion, whatever. So it's a pretty massive market.
Yeah. Which I
Now,
love.
in that scenario, what I'm wondering about is tech stack, and
Yeah.
this is kind of what is really interesting to me because we work primarily with Adobe Commerce, Magento, and BigCommerce
Yeah.
for the e-commerce. We are very dedicated to the e-commerce portion. We're not responsible for the full tech stack, but we often get into conversations with our clients and advise them, you might consider, given your content needs, a more robust CMS or a PIM or a dam. So can you just give me a picture of maybe not your ideal content stack that includes dotCMS, but maybe like a typical content stack, or anything, if there is any such thing, or a common
There
content
is.
stack?
There is, like I said, a content management system never walks alone. There's always an ecosystem, a small ecosystem of adjacent technologies in that digital marketing or digital commerce stack, right? So in retail, there's always a commerce engine, right? So we have to play well with any commerce solution, which we do. Uh, then, these days, everybody has a CRM, marketing automation, so there's that too. And then
Like
certainly when it comes to
Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever,
exactly
SAP, Oracle. Yeah, okay.
all those players. And then there's mostly a digital asset management system, right? Typically, brands, want to consolidate all their, assets in a digital asset management system. And the beauty about today's, digital marketing technology is that they're all API based. So that really makes integration and interoperability between dotCMS and any of those vendors super seamless. So what we quite often do, and as you know, selecting a content management system is not something you do, overnight. It's a process. Could take 6 to 9 months, if not longer. And enterprises reach out to us when they're already 60, 70% in their buying cycle, right? And so what we do after initial demos, what we do a lot is proof of concepts. It's a complementary service to really showcase how we play with the rest of their stack. So we always include integrations. We don't shy away from that because building those integrations is really minutes, hours, tops. You spend a lot more about defining the use case and what you would like to see than the actual build. And that's very powerful. Again, people want to make a well-informed decision before they commit to a solution like a content management system. I mean, the average tenure of a dotCMS customer is 8 years, right? So if you make a decision, you want to know that it will fit the bill for the next 5 to 10 years. That's not uncommon in content management world.
And when I think about, again, your ICP or your typical client, one of the things you mentioned is that these clients have needs beyond a single channel or a single platform.
Yeah.
So they're talking about desktop, they're talking about mobile, they're talking about kiosk, they're talking about client portals, they're talking about bank portals, and so another key element of this enterprise client model is that they have to get their content out to a variety of different environments. And is it accurate to say that's why they need something like dotCMS? Because otherwise they could probably just go with, if they've just got one primary channel, maybe a standard, PIM, DAM,
Sure.
CMS might work for them.
Sure.
Is that an accurate characterization of the value of a platform like yours?
Absolutely. I mean, omni-channel, is like a typical motion for brands these days. I mean, it's really about how you want to connect, or how do you want your constituents and customers and prospects to connect with you, right? And which is not just the website these days. I mean, you have your social channels, you have point of sales, you have kiosks, you name it. So you have to have a solution that supports that omni-channel, strategy, right? And dotCMS is, and again, we're not unique in that regard, is we're a content-centric CMS, plus we're an API-first CMS. So content is created once and then can be repurposed as many times as you see fit over APIs to all those different channels, right? So that's very common. But even if you have a single, if in the unique situation that you have a unique, only a single channel where you want to expose content, then it still could make sense to have an enterprise-grade platform, right? I mean, scalability, if scalability and load on your system is relevant, your standard WordPress or Wix will probably not fit the bill there, right? So that's where you need scalability, and that's obviously where enterprise-grade content management systems can help you there. But again, going back to your point, omni-channel is pretty much the standard these days, regardless what brand, or even, in nonprofits and government, you see omni-channel strategies for sure.
And so when we have these conversations with our clients, and even when we're approached by other businesses, many times they come to us and they say, you're one of 3 or 4 agencies we're considering working with. Or our clients come to us and they say, give us, 2 or 3 PIM providers or CMS options for us. So what I'm wondering is, I don't need to dig into all the competitive stuff, but I am curious. Do you find yourself competing with a few other platforms in particular that our merchants might be interested in hearing about?
Absolutely. I mean, the usual suspects are, headless players like Contentful, Content Stack, Storyblock, Agility also recently. So that's a big thing in retail. So we see those, vendors. If you look more into a hybrid headless or a suite, we run up against, Magnolia, Bloomreach, but even Acquia and Adobe. Oddly enough, in the top 3, and I just saw the data from our net new customers in the last couple of years, who we are replacing, right? Number 3 was Adobe, right? And again, obviously everybody wants to have Adobe AEM because it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, has all the bells and whistles, but nobody has the budget except for a few, high enterprise customers. So no surprise there that we, align pretty well with Adobe. I mean, our customer Deutsche Bank basically has an internal, shared service center to their internal business units. They offer 2 solutions, Adobe and dotCMS. So we line up very well with
Best of
Adobe.
both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. That's very helpful. And when you think about kind of your competitive and, your distinguishing features, maybe anything that comes to mind that you would say is particularly attractive about dotCMS?
Yeah, I mean, we asked that question obviously to net new customers, right? Why did you choose dotCMS? And there's 3 things that stand out really in their response. One is the ease of usability for non-technical users, right? So again, we bring a lot of tooling to the table where merchandisers, marketers can operate independently from development teams. So that's highly appreciated. We still have, tons of work to do. You're never done with that. But then secondly is also the ease of development, and that's really from a developer perspective, how easy it is to build applications on top of and with dotCMS and the rest of your digital commerce stack. And then thirdly is really scalability. And that's really no surprise. I mean, again, a customer like Dairy Queen, they run dotCMS headless. They have a Next.js front end, and they generate like 100 million, API requests per month. And they already did that without a CDN, and they just run on 2 servers. So it just gives you a little bit of notion of scalability of dotCMS without breaking the bank, because again, you can make any application performant as long as you throw enough computing power at it. But yeah, that ain't cheap.
And the customizability of your platform, where do people kind of, other than the API connectors, which obviously frequently have to be somewhat customized, where do you see customization happening mostly on your platform?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So 3 areas, I would say. One, in the content model. So our content designer also allows for custom code fields, basically where you can inject, your own code, whether it's Java or, VTL or what have you. So that's a very popular area. That's also where you can, build very powerful integrations with, for instance, digital asset management system, where you can support use cases like, okay, as a merchandiser, I want to search, browse, and select an asset from an external digital asset management system while I'm in dotCMS composing a page, right? But that's custom code fields in the content builder, but also in our rules engine. So we have a native personalization engine where you can define business rules to trigger, personalization setting. Comes with a library of, standard triggers, I think 30 something, but you can also extend that by building, custom plugins. So that's a very popular area. That's actually the only area where you would need a Java developer in dotCMS to build those custom plugins. And then the third one, I would say, is workflow. So content approval workflows. It's also an extensible framework where we have, a whole library of standardized sub-actions, but you can also extend it there. So those are the three popular areas to, basically extend and customize dotCMS.
And when people are implementing dotCMS, customizing it for their needs, are there performance concerns? Is there kind of a kind of built-in performance optimization in using dotCMS, or do you just have best practices that you say, look, this is how it works as efficiently as possible?
Both. So that's a good question. So particularly in retail where you have, high traffic websites and I always see that concern. And so we have a couple of, options there. So first of all, dotCMS Cloud comes with a, proprietary content delivery network, right? So you can do a lot of good in terms of performance on the front end, right? But then we also have built-in caching layers, right? So even if a request reaches the platform beyond the CDN, then there's a whole, slew of caching, options at your disposal. For instance, GraphQL APIs are not cached by design by content delivery network. So we built a proprietary GraphQL caching layer. We did this, during the Dairy Queen project, where we saw a drop of response time from 58 milliseconds to below 4. Now you can imagine if you have 4 or 5 million visitors per day, that has a huge impact on, performance. So those are the key areas, and obviously we have, our best practices in how to tune, your caching strategies, but also API strategies. We had a customer that was making 100 API requests to the platform for a single request. Now we were able to replace that with one. Again, if you have 1 million visitors per day and you can replace 100 API requests with a single API request, that has huge ramifications on the underlying infrastructure and the computing power that you would need to make it performant.
Yeah, makes all the difference in the world. That's huge. Especially, I mean, we see that all the time, and ways that we can optimize the e-commerce flow experience. I mean, to your point, the higher the volume, the greater the impact. Even with moderate adjustments or improvements. This is just more out of my own curiosity. Do you see for clients of dotCMS that actually are using an e-commerce platform, do you see one platform being more popular than others, or is it pretty much spread across multiple?
We see them all, but all the mainstream vendors. But I would say BigCommerce, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and Adobe, or formerly known as Magento, I would say are the top three that we see in our customer base, and also with prospects. An interesting customer is Avery.com. They use Magento, right, as a commerce engine, but they use dotCMS not only for their content management, their marketing content, but also as their PIM system, right? So that again goes back to, there's a lot of overlap in this space between a content management system, an e-commerce engine, digital asset, and document management. So you always see interesting use cases. But again, going back to your question, I would say Salesforce, BigCommerce, and Magento are definitely the top three.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Shopify has made a fairly, not splash, but they're really trying to go after the B2B market recently. So I'm curious to see if that starts to, I'm just curious to see if that starts to filter in over the next year or so.
I agree.
Yeah.
We see them every now and then. We see Shopify for sure in both B2B and B2C. But yeah, and again, It's a great platform. All of them, like I said, all of them are API first, which is really elegant. And we always take, if we were talking to a retail prospect, to say, hey, let us, build out a POC for you and integrate with your commerce solution, so you can see how the two of them work together. So again, it's so darn easy these days with APIs. It's completely different than like 15 years ago.
And so two kind of time frame questions, if there's a merchant who wants to get POC put together for them, a proof of concept, what's the time frame? What are the requirements?
Yeah.
How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so we have a conversation because we obviously want to understand what you would like to prove out, right? So the more input you can give us and assets and what have you, the easier it is. So we typically start with a kickoff, and if people have documented stuff, that's even better. But then it depends a little bit on, the workload in our sales engineering team. We do like, 10, 15 POCs in parallel all the time, pretty much. So it depends a little bit on the bandwidth. Sometimes we can crank it out in a week, but I say on average, always it's like 2 weeks, give and take.
Sure.
As a lead time to demonstrate a proof of concept to you.
And you said the sales cycle, it could be as long as 6 to 9 months. So when you are starting in on a project, what is implementation time frame? And I know that we're talking broad brushstrokes here, but just generally.
Yeah, I would say on average, anywhere between 3 to 6 months is a good ballpark. We've seen customers, a telco in Romania and Europe a couple of years ago. They're still a customer that did an implementation in 3 weeks. That was insane. And again, this is pure headless. They already had a lot of work done on the front end. We were replacing Adobe. They already had that front end, obviously working with Adobe. But again, the go live was in 3 weeks after they, signed up with us. So that was, mind blowing.
Great.
But again, you're never done with a platform, right? So I would say initial go live sometimes, takes a year, 9 months, but on average, I would say 3 to 6 months for initial go live. But then it's usually a first iteration of your platform. Yeah. And then, there you have your phase 2, 3, and what have you. And, partners are involved, on a retainer basis. Because again, replatforming is a CMS is usually part of a bigger, transformation. So we're only one of many out there. So that's why those transformation projects take usually a lot longer than 3 to 6 months.
And it's interesting when you think about one of the values of going headless is that in theory, that process would not be as onerous, in the future if it's decoupling one thing from an API connector. It's very different than decoupling an element of a monolith that you've depended on for 10 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%. The funny thing is that if you look at the pure headless players right now, they're all looking into building page builders, effectively becoming a hybrid headless. And there's a reason, just it makes you more stickier, so basically against all your, everything you preached,
That's right. But there is a market for that. There is a subset of the market that's just like, that's exactly what I need, and I don't want to have to go to yet another vendor, because that's the other thing about headless is that, you can decouple, but then you've got 15 vendors instead of one, so it's a little bit,
there's a trade-off.
But for certain enterprise level businesses, it's definitely the way to go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I see it a lot in retail, right? In retail, IT, usually you have bigger IT teams and they really want to control the whole stack. So that's where headless is really popular, because they don't want to rely on third-party, technology. They really want to own that and control it. So it makes total sense. And again, if you have those large in-house development teams, you can afford it. It can work for you. But what I say to people that when they come to us, say, we want a headless, great use case. And say, but let me ask you, if your marketing team wants to have like a short-lived landing page for only 2 weeks or 1 week, How do you want to go about that? Do you want to bother a developer to build it and then throw it away after 2 weeks, or no? We haven't thought about it. Okay, well, that's where a page
That's like
builder,
one of the one of the primary use cases. Like,
exactly,
yeah,
I know. And so, and again, that's why those pure headless players are building page builders, because it's such a common use case in retail, like a landing page or a product detail page. You want to act swiftly because, again, those merchandisers are constantly looking, okay, what's happening on my website? They want to make changes
yep,
quickly
yep,
and without making it a developer effort, how
yes,
small or big it is.
yeah, yep. So, in terms of pricing, anything that you can share, or is
Yeah,
it just a matter of contact sales? And we talk. I mean, I know that that's ultimately where it lands, but any
sure.
general ideas?
Absolutely. No, I can absolutely share some data points, right? So again, if you look into dotCMS Cloud, which is our platform as a service offering based on AWS infrastructure and products, starts at $45,000. On average, customers spend close to $70,000 per year on subscriptions. If you host it yourself, then that price point is a little bit lower, starts at $40,000 per year. But again, we have customers that spend $500,000 with dotCMS. We also have still some legacy customers that have been with us for 16 years, and they pay $15,000. But I think for right now, the price point on average is close to $65,000, $70,000, and we start at $45,000.
And when you say subscriptions, that's like subscriptions through dotCMS, or are they apps from external vendors, like in an app marketplace kind of thing? Like, those subscriptions are through dotCMS directly?
Yeah, yeah. When I talk about subscriptions, those are subscriptions directly through dotCMS. Although we have partners who basically resell our licenses as well. I mean, that's a model that we can support also. But it's really the end user license agreement plus the maintenance and support that is included in that subscription, right? So we had perpetual licenses back in the day, like many other people, but we fully converted for both the self-hosted as well as the cloud product to a subscription-based model.
And so, just to make sure that I'm clear, when we're talking about cloud, is this kind of usage based or connection based, or a kind of hybrid of the two?
That's a great question. So yeah, we don't do usage based subscription. That's also where we stand out significantly from a lot of players actually. So basically in the cloud construct, it's about, okay, how many environments, dedicated environments, would you like to have outside your production environment? And what is the uptime SLA associated to it, right? Where we offer no uptime SLA, 99.9, 99.95, and 99.98. Then there's also the notion of computing power, right? Where the number of CPUs and the number of Java RAM that you associate to a pod, we containerize everything, right? And so those are really the key drivers for a dotCMS cloud subscription. There's a lot of unlimited in dotCMS, so we don't care how many applications you run on dotCMS, how many user seats, how many API requests or page views. We don't throttle or do rate limiting. It's all unlimited within the confines of your bandwidth
Sure.
and the storage, right? Because again, that ain't free with Mr. Bezos. So, but no restrictions. So we don't cap you if you have like bursts in your traffic because it's back to school campaign goes live. We just look at it on a 12-month basis of your contract, and then reconcile if you need to increase or decrease bandwidth and storage. But that's for the cloud. And then for self-hosted dotCMS, a similar model. We work with the notion of an instance, where an instance can be a physical server, a virtual server, or a pod in the containerized world. And then we have some add-ons. We have a number of support tiers, 3, and things like authentication support for single sign-on integration, custom Docker images, and also custom plugins, right? So as I mentioned, you can extend the platform, build your custom plugins, and we can take on the maintenance and support of those custom plugins, particularly if a vendor or a partner implemented, those custom plugins and then moves on, and then the in-house team doesn't want to support those. And so we could take that on for you.
Great. That's helpful. That helps me understand the design of your pricing structure. That's, very helpful. Now, when you think about the future of dotCMS, are you planning any substantial adjustments to your technology? And I know AI is all the rage to talk about, and we've already touched on headless. So I think that, for your level of clientele, I can't imagine that AI is anything other than a curiosity, until it's fully baked and fully tested and vetted and really adding value. I can't imagine that it would fit. But even so, like, maybe touch on some ideas that you guys have for future.
Sure. No, absolutely. Well, on the topic of AI, it's obviously hot, and I can see a number of use cases where it could help to automate things in the content management world. Whether it's a migration from a legacy vendor to dotCMS, but also in the content creation process. Where you do like tagging, automated tagging, or for SEO purposes. We already have a native integration with Amazon Recognition, which is basically an AI-based tagging solution. But I definitely see a certain future for AI within dotCMS and content management as a whole. But what I would say is that I think the biggest challenge that I see where we need to have an answer for as an industry is really the whole notion of composability. And composability, it's the Kool-Aid that everybody's drinking right now, right? It's a hot topic. And for me, there's
two. And that's basically headless, but exploded into those 15 vendors that we talked about.
Yeah. And I'm not even, I don't even want to go technical. To me, composability holistically means two things. First of all, interoperability. So I'm composing a stack, with multiple vendors, and they have to work together at a technical level. But for me, it's more so from a business perspective. I want to compose experiences. I don't want to care as a merchandiser or a marketer where content sits. I want to, very intuitively, create the, experiences that I deem necessary based on data, obviously, right? So I want to have insights in how people are interacting with the digital touch points that I manage, with my digital experience platform. And I want to have actionable insights to optimize those, because again, that's all we do. We optimize, touch points and experiences for the sake of business, right? We want to drive online conversion or retention and upsell and all that good stuff. So that's where I think we still have a way to go, right? Again, back in the day, you needed a rocket scientist and an editor to crank out web pages. What I love about the industry is that the whole demarcation between non-technical users and developers has shifted, in favor of the non-technical users. And I think we're only, at the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more that I would want to do as a business person with the technology that I have at my disposal to really drive business, whether it's generating new revenue streams or expanding current revenue streams. Technology, is never the goal in itself. It's just an enabler for me to stay competitive or be more competitive than the rest of the industry. And that's where I think we still have a lot to do, and dotCMS for sure. And there's a lot of ideas that we want to embark on. Before the end of the first half of this year, we want to, launch our proprietary experiments tool, right? So right now, customers, integrate with Google Experiments or an external A/B testing tool. So we're going to launch our native version. We're also going to do a significant overhaul in our UI UX to really support that composability with our, new page manager UX that really makes it a lot more intuitive than it is right now. There's still a lot of clicks that we want to get rid of. But then in the second half, we really want to double down more on integrations, expanding existing capabilities that really support that composability and how business people work with our product and basically do a better, day-to-day job.
And when you mentioned interoperability, well, first of all, that's a lot, which is great and exciting. When you mentioned interoperability, I can't remember. Are you guys a member of the Mock Alliance? Is that something that
we're not?
Okay,
we're not, and not yet. Maybe. We're currently a platform as a service, so we're not a cloud native product.
Okay.
That's something we are addressing. So if I would now go to the Mac Alliance, it probably would be rejected. So why even bother? I definitely support their principles. Don't get me wrong. I think they're doing a great job. There's a lot of traction right now, but we're currently addressing that also because we definitely want to move to a pure SaaS model. There's a lot of advantages, that comes with a pure SaaS, but we're not there yet. So it'll probably take us, well, not only this year, but probably also a large portion of next year to get there. And then,
it sounds like you and Adobe Commerce are on the same path then, moving from platform as a service into the SaaS realm, because it sounds like that's the direction that Adobe is going as well. And one of the things that everyone can agree on is that the API-first concept and the kind of standardization of those connectors will help everyone. And I don't know how we get to that standardization, but that seems to be at least one of the pillars of the Mock Alliance. So even if you're not a member, we can all work towards getting those APIs a little bit more.
Our CTO has some really exciting ideas about it. So can't say too much about it, but there's a lot of thinking about this because again, going back to my point, you never walk alone as a content management system. And so the better you can play with the rest of the ecosystem, the better fit you are. So we definitely want to accommodate that and make that as little code as possible, right? I think that's the key thing here. Although we're a Java platform, you don't really need a Java developer to implement dotCMS. We see that maybe in 2 to 5% of our projects where you need custom plugins. But other than that, you just need web developers, and it's a different skill. It's more accessible than, hardcore Java developers. So it also makes the total cost of ownership of a product like dotCMS a lot more interesting, future forward.
All right. So, Stefan, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I appreciate all of your detailed answers. Is there anything that we've missed or that you feel like you'd like to share with the audience at all, or have we covered pretty much everything?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot. The only thing, like I said, is if people want to, test, dotCMS and see it in action to its full extent, they should reach out to you guys. And we're more than happy to obviously do a demo, but even more so proof of concept to really demonstrate the value that we can bring to your teams, right? Both developers as well as merchandisers and content marketers. So encourage everybody to reach out to you.
We'd love to make those introductions if there's a good potential fit. So we look forward to making those connections. And more than anything else, just want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate you giving us this insight into dotCMS. Clearly a platform of value for many substantial businesses online. So we look forward to seeing great success for you and your team in the future.
Well, thanks a lot, Tim. Thanks for having me. We look forward to working with you guys as well, obviously. And looking forward to talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Stefan. Take care.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
For more insights on how to improve your e-commerce website and for a free consultation, visit ironplane.com. Follow us on social media. and like and subscribe below.